Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Michaela K. Canterbury. Michaela and I are going to be talking on a very interesting, to me at least, and I hope to you, topic. We're going to be looking at high functioning addicts and how to spot the signs, because when we're talking about high functioning, we're not talking about people that are visibly high or visibly addicted. We're talking about the ones that can carry on in life and you would not know. But apparently, there's ways to spot the signs. And Michaela is the author of the book, Sister Siren, a field guide on how to love an addict. So she comes to us with experience. Welcome, Michaela.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for having me as a guest on your show. You're right. This is such an important topic, as addiction is prolific, and I love to share the knowledge and experience that I gain, and so we can all just step in on this epidemic, if you will, of what's happening in our country and the world.
Yes, very true. And I have not had anyone in the show talk about this topic. So I love learning. I love new information. And I hope you guys do too. So, all right. So let me give you a brief introduction. Michaela Kelly Canterbury, as I mentioned, is the author of the book, Sister Siren, a field guide on how to love an addict. Michaela is also a lawyer and a writer. She's licensed to practice law in Alaska and is owner, operator, and lead trial lawyer at Kelly and Canterbury LLC, where she works with her husband, Christopher, partner in all things. Michaela resides in Eagle River, Alaska with Christopher, where they raised their son, daughter, and dogs in the same valley and woods that she was raised. So that's a nice personal backstory, Michaela. So as we get into our topic, I'm very curious to hear about your story of your sister and what you learned from that experience and how to love an addict, really.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. I will start with first, we are 13 years apart. So I'm the older sister. And so she's 13 years younger than I am. And so we have a unique sibling relationship where I was like a really cool sub parent. Our parents got a built-in babysitter. And so I've known her whole life. Right. And she's known me her whole life. So that's kind of the first thing that I think I need to put out there, because when addiction enters people's lives, it's one thing to think about is the relationship that you have with the addict in your life, right? And so the kind of loving relationship you have with a person that is suffering from addiction. There's concepts of conditional love, unconditional love, those types of things. So our relationship is unique in that we're siblings, and I've known her whole life. Okay, so there's not a condition to our relationship. She will always be my sister. Okay, so I just wanted to put that out there, because there's addiction strikes everywhere, whether it's in an employment a situation where you're a superior to somebody who may be suffering, or a parent-child, or a loving relationship, partners, things like that. Anywho, moving forward, addiction surfaced in our family's life when my sister was in her 30s. So I was in my 40s. And we are a family of high functioning professionals. I'm a trial lawyer. My dad's a trial lawyer. He's retired now. My mother is a PhD, was head of her department at university, had a parallel profession running a nonprofit educating people in Alaska to get their GEDs and into vocational training and English as a second language, things like that. And my sister obtained a master's in counseling and licensed to practice. She was also an elite athlete. She was a college athlete, and she tried out for, or was invited to try out for a professional women's soccer team, but decided to take the education route. So all these, and I hear this often, it's like, well, how did this happen to your family? So I guess kind of wanted to set that backdrop, if you will, to how this funneled in. When my sister was a preteen, like 12, 13-ish, she was in the Arctic Winter Games, and she was a speed skater. And she broke her ankle at a practice round and in Canada. And at that age, at that tender age, not an adult, they thought nothing. So this was in the 80s, that they thought nothing of giving a preteen hydrocodone, oxycodone, those types of things for pain and management of pain. And my parents didn't question it, even though my dad's a personal injury lawyer. Again, those medications were just coming out at that time. And so the addictive qualities were not known. There's a lot of litigation over that now. But anywho, so at the tender age of 12, 13-ish, she's being given that for an injury. And shortly after that, she went through her rehab. And this I'm able to gather, Myrna, in hindsight, 2020, I'm still, I'm doing my own schooling. But anyway, shortly after that, after her rehabilitation and recovery from that significant injury, she was assessed with ADHD and given more medication to manage, and she's still a kid, or for our family to manage what was considered at that time, I suppose, unmanageable behavior in the school system, in the public school system. She was getting into fights. She's a scrapper. Things like that. So and I have my opinions about managing that. But I know through experience now, it's basically the medication to manage ADHD back in those days is basically meth light. So that kind of grounded the foundation for her. And we're not putting the pieces together. We can do that now. But that kept going. She became dependent upon medications. Her mind, her physicality, her body, and indeed her spirit eventually became dependent upon that. And it followed her and became quite a beast, Myrna. So does that kind of answer your question?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, so between preteen and 30s, what you're saying is, taking oxycodone as a preteen, how did that translate into addiction in your 30s? Where did she get more of it? Obviously, what was she addicted to? Was she addicted to painkillers?
She was dependent upon substances. Okay. So that's, yes. So she was given that at a preteen, and then she was given Ritalin or whatever the medication is for ADHD. And then through high school and college, she was doing everything. She was drinking, she was mushrooms, cocaine, you name it. I don't even know what these things are because I'm I
Right.
don't, it
Right.
didn't come into my life. It
Right.
wasn't part of my life. Um,
Mhm.
she talks about Molly. I don't even know what that is. I don't know what these things are, but she was doing all of that
Okay.
through high school and college.
Mm-hmm.
And then throughout high school and college, she continued to sustain injuries with her
Mm-hmm.
sports. And then when she came back to Alaska after her schooling, I mean, so mind you, she is performing highly in her
Mm-hmm.
sport. I mean, she's like a rock star, making the
Mm-hmm.
all-star team, all this jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And she's doing phenomenally well in college and in her graduate program.
Oh, really?
It wasn't until she returns to Alaska with um, her husband. She was the captain of the soccer team at her college, and she married the captain of the men's program, and he also suffered from addiction, and his parents were alcoholics or are alcoholics. Um,
Wow.
so anyway, they moved up to Alaska, and it perpetuates, and we still didn't know. We didn't know until we got a call. I can see the signs now. They make sense to me now that I
Mm-hmm.
should have known, and I had all my guilt about my contribution to it because every car accident she got into, remember, I'm a personal injury lawyer. Oh, I'm there to save the day, and uh and I'm thinking, what was I thinking? How did I not spot that?
Mm-hmm.
So that's in part another reason why I'm like so happy to be on your show, so I can share this stuff, so we can. I now know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
That's what that was. So, like for example, um, not inability to maintain a job, uh, a feeling of overwhelm, that things are inability to manage a calendar, paperwork, duties of the job, a schedule, um, things like that. I started to think, man, maybe this is part of her ADHD.
Personality. Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
she's like, yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't do that and they're not addicted. But I want to circle back to something you just said, which I find interesting. Um, you said that even when she was doing all these drugs, and not just the painkillers, you talked about Molly and mushrooms and cocaine and whatever drugs, the ones that affect your abilities, right? Pain pills probably don't affect your abilities. I think they just mask pain and mask your personality and all that. But you're saying that she was able still to perform as an athlete. Um, so one, normally as an athlete, they drug test you. But two, I don't understand how you can perform at the highest level of an athlete while taking drugs. Did you do you have an input for that? Did you study that?
I did not study it. But I observed it. Like
Okay.
I'd go
All
to her
right.
games, and she was on fire. She was
Wow.
great and great energy and big, and when she was at what I feel was the height of her active addiction, like she was homeless and on the streets of Alaska, I observed that, and I can say this looking back now, Myrna, I observed that greatness. I'm bigger than life, you know. I now know what that is. I didn't know what that was. I thought she really wasn't. She is a great athlete. She was a great athlete. But this is how smart she is she could really toggle between an upper and a downer to manage her life,
Mm,
depending
mm,
upon what was calling to her.
mm.
And she
Okay.
really thought she could do that in her 30s when she's being a counselor. I can take an upper for this and a downer for this and get myself together. And she was like her own pharmacist with prescribed
Mm.
medications. And then when our
Mm,
family was not giving her money. When my mom wasn't giving her money,
Mhm.
that's when it transitioned. Her addiction was in full swing. That's when it switched to heroin and meth. And so she was really toggling between those two for the uppers and the downers. And I'm looking back, Myrna, I feel that that's how she managed that. Like she would do the upper. Now, and again, this was in a time where um, drug tests at colleges wasn't happening. I mean,
Okay.
we're very aware now. And it may, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up. That may have been a reason why she didn't try out for the women's professional team. It
Because
may
you have
have
to be
been,
tested, right? Yes.
and
It
just
looks like,
go,
sounds like she
go
was
this
smart,
way.
smart girl,
She
right?
is smart. She's brilliant. She's very smart. She
Yeah.
never lied. That was it. She would never lie. She would just make, the different choice.
Omissions, right, right, right. Okay. Right. Okay. So, all right. So I'm understanding the story. So you found out, later on that she was an addict. Um, but the book that you talked about is How to Love an Addict. So so walk us through. You're a high performing family. Your husband, your mom, your dad, and your sister too, So, you said a minute ago that your mom was giving her money because she couldn't hold down a job. And that's basically what we see in the movies. Oh, the son comes home or the daughter comes home and hitting the mother up for money or go in her wallet or steal her stuff and sell it. But it's always to do with money, you know? Um, so how can you support an addict without enabling them?
Yeah, very, very, it's very difficult, um, especially for parents. I mean, it's that, remember I was telling you about that unconditional love thing?
Mhm.
And my, there's unconditional love in the parental relationship, in most parental relationships. And my mom really thought she was helping. And I also need to caveat this with, now we're way out now. My mom suffers from Alzheimer's, and so she's and we think in hindsight that was beginning to present itself when my sister was in active addiction. So my mom's levels, if you will, she really thought she was helping. My sister would say, I need money for my medication. I'm between jobs. So when she would be between jobs, unable to hold a job, she would like work at a coffee shop or whatever. And my mom would be like, okay, and give her the money for her medication, not knowing the medication was heroin and meth, right?
Right.
Thinking that it's, her medication for ADHD or
Mhm.
her whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And that ended up evolving. And so that's kind of how that happened. And you don't see it
But let
as
me stop you right there.
negative.
So let's say reverse put you or some mother that knows your kids on the street, you know that they're an addict, they don't want to get help, and they come and they hit you up for money, and it
Mhm,
breaks your heart because
mhm.
you don't want to give them money. So
Right.
your mom didn't know, but talk about to somebody that knows
Yeah.
what do you suggest?
Okay. What we did as a family, I can tell you what we did. And so my dad was like, "We are not going to financially support." Whoop. When I'm banging on my desk, my camera went weird. Sorry about that. I'm banging on my desk. So my dad's like, "No cash, no cash, no gift cards to her because they're traded for drugs." Okay, hard. So take them out to lunch, take them for a meal. Show up with what they really need. And so I would show up with a first aid kit. I would show up with rubbing alcohol, with bandages. I mean, her arm was all, I would show up without expectation, with love, with what's going to be what I can do. And what everybody can do is different. What I can do is different from what my husband can do, and is different from what my adult children can do. And don't please refrain from being judgy McJudgy of what other people can do. All right. Everybody has their own relationship with the addict that is in your life. And my relationship with my sister is different than my husband's relationship with my sister. I've known her whole life. He has not. So it's just, and so how he shows up is going to be different. And so, and that takes some self-knowledge on your own part. Like, what can I do? And what are my limits? Some people call this boundaries, but what are my limits of love here that I can do? So when she would ask for money, I'd be like, honey, I can't do that. And she's like, yes, you can. You can just electronically transfer, blah, easy peasy mac and cheesy. And she's very convincing. And I'm like, no, I'm a product of the 80s. I don't know how to do that. I don't live on my phone. Cash is king. And I can't give you that. My husband and I have a relationship where we talk about our money. So anyway, I would always have a loving response about that. But I can show up and take you out to lunch. I can bring you pillows and blankets. I can show up with water. I would bring her meals. That's what I would.
Was she homeless?
She was homeless. She was living in her car. They were living in trap houses. It was very scary, Myrna. It was very scary. If one is going to show up in love at a trap house, which kind of sounds like an oxymoron, which it is. I mean, in my heart, that's an evil place. Please tell people you love and you trust what you're doing, when you're going to be, how long you expect to be there, and have a little agenda of what your intention is of your presence. I actually wrote down bullets of what my intention was and what I was going to do. I was going to deliver this first aid kit and this water and pillows and blankets. I was going to tell her I loved her, and I was going to remind her of appointments. And we had an agreement. I mean, I'm a family of lawyers, right? So we have a written contract with her, a memorandum of understanding that we would provide certain financial support, provided there were efforts towards rehab and getting clean. And it's not a straight line there, and it was really hard, Myrna, to toggle between that, because she relapsed, and how relapse flows into that. So, and whether, are we enabling or are we supporting her recovery? It's a really individual sticky wicket. But showing up in love and in what you can do, that's going to be healthfully supportive of their recovery is the line that you need to find for your own self.
Yeah. So when you were talking about, showing up and giving her the blankets and the first aid kit and things like that, what crossed my mind is, when you show up, would you say, what is your path to becoming clean, or are you going to try, or I don't know. I know that when you're an addict, it's very hard to go through the withdrawals, and it's very hard to beat it. And even when you go through the pain and the rehab and all that, it's very hard to stay there, right? So yeah, so let's transition now to the question is, so you've got, because this is my curiosity, so that you have got a family member that's an addict, husband, sister, brother, I don't know, even mom, I guess, or parents. And you love them. You don't want to give them money. I'm assuming they don't want to come live in your house, so they're homeless on the street. So do you pick them up and take them to rehab forcefully? Do you got them committed? I mean, like, what are some of the ways that you can love them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you have to find out for your own self, is how you're going to show up in your loving relationship with this person. And so it's not the same for everybody, and you can't force somebody into rehab. They've got to do this their own self. And that's what I was doing. I was showing up at the trap houses saying, I'll take you to a 12-step meeting. I'll take you to a rehab place. So, and I did, but it was always, she was like a zombie. And then there were times where she would be like, I would show up, snow is falling, I'm seeing needles around the trap house. I'm showing up to take her to a medical appointment. I mean, how crazy is that? And I show up and I have my little agenda, you know, and she opens up the window and she's like, sis, I'm not going. I'm like, come on, I'm here. I drove through a snowstorm. I realized she just shut the door. She shut the window on me and she said, I'm not going. And it was like, she closed her heart to me. I was heartbroken. I was like, I'm getting emotional talking about
That's
it.
what I'm saying. It's very hard to do. It's very hard to do. I have my own personal experience with a guy with crack, and I come to realize that, it's very hard. Actually, I think crack is one of the only things you can really never become not addicted to. You know what I mean? I think what crack does, it changes something in your brain and you're always a crack addict. So, I mean, heroin, you can get off of it, and alcohol, you can stop drinking. Pills, I don't know. They're saying now that once you're addicted to those pain pills, you really can't get off of it. But I know that anybody that's going through that, it is a bitch of a journey to come clean. And
that's why I'm so
very
proud
few
of her.
people have that. Very few people have that ability. Like, if you're an alcoholic, you can just stop drinking. I don't think there's any big, I don't think there's any big thing. People just said, well, I just decided to stop one day and they stop. You know what I mean? So, but so I know that it's very hard to do. Now, what are you say that there's in your book? You say there's 5 things that you should not do in an addict. So what would they be?
Don't tell them what to do is number one. Nobody likes to be told what to do. And that gets into what we were talking about before is I can't force her to go to rehab. I can't force her to make that switch, to stop putting a needle in her arm, to stop taking pills, to stop drinking. That's every body that suffers from addiction or substance dependency has to find their way to recovery. No one can tell them to do, because that would be my way. And we are 2 completely different people. And it has to be her time. I thought it's pretty rock bottom to be in a trap house and being beat up by other men. And that's pretty rock bottom from a woman who was high functioning college athlete and then, delivering counseling services. How bad can it get? But her rock bottom is apparently way lower than mine would ever be. So don't tell them what to do. They've got to find it their own way. I'm thinking 12-step program, rehab right away, chip, chop, chip. We'll get this puppy going. And even when she did, and when she was agreeable to rehab, she called us and she said she was ready. She went through rehab, I want to say 2 or 3 times. And she did find her own way that worked for her, because there's no rubric to this. Everybody has their own little. People that suffer from substance use dependency have their own what's going to work for them, what's going to fit for them. So anyway, don't tell them what to do. Obviously, don't, like we discussed before, don't give them cash, and don't give them things that are transferable easily to cash, like gift cards, things like that. Don't sign contracts with them. And what I mean by that is like rental contracts, car loan contracts, bank accounts. So don't have your stuff intermingled. So
Right.
really kind of, we talked about limits. Some people call them boundaries, but set those. They can be set lovingly. Uh, you know, I'm not going to do that. That's not, but what I can do is this, I can show up here. So those are, what not, and also that dovetails into what can you do? So I would say, don't react to their perceived crisis.
Mhm.
Everything's a crisis.
Mhm.
Everything's got a flat tire, need money for gas, need to get to help, blah, blah, blah. So I just need $150, that type of thing. So it's like, well, I can step into that perceived crisis. Do you need a ride somewhere? I happen to have the time. Oh, by
Mhm.
the way. So that,
Mhm.
you know, that, so
Right,
there's
right.
what, don't step into their crisis. Just
Okay.
it's coming,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
coming
because
at you.
they don't have the facility to calmly, you know, work things out. Everything is a crisis. You're right, because their
Right,
body is can't even find relaxation. It's looking for the next high all the time. So it's
right,
always they're always up. That's why they need downers. Okay, so
right.
I get it.
And last but not least is, don't have expectations. I mean, that just sets your own heart up for failure. What do they say? Expectations are predetermined resentments. Just, that this is how you can step in and then let it go. That's all you can do. If it's received, yay team. If it's not received, you've done the best you can do. So that's the last don't do with an addict. Don't
Right,
have
yes.
expectations. Just step in with the love that you can do, and that is it.
Okay. All right, so our topic today is talking about high functioning addicts. So let's talk about what exactly are we labeling a high functioning addict. Now, when I think of a high functioning addict, I'm thinking of a cocaine user, because I know from watching, I'm not talking about crack, but cocaine, the one the powder. I thinking that there's a lot of professionals that are functioning addicts and nobody can tell, or maybe even pills, maybe they're functioning with pills. So what is your definition of what is the clinical definition of a high functioning addict? Number one.
Well, I'm not aware of the clinical definition. I just play one on TV, if you will.
Okay.
But in my profession as an attorney, we had our bar, and all attorneys across the nation, all bar associations, and yes, that's what we call it. It's kind of funny that we're talking about addiction, and for lawyers, it's called the Bar Association. It's not a bar that you go to have a gin and tonic, but it's that's what it's called, the Bar Association. The Bar Association has what's called the Lawyers Assistance Committee. All right. And so the Lawyers Assistance Committee exists to be a safe haven for attorneys that are suffering from alcoholism, addiction, which often dovetails with mental health issues. So it's a safe haven for lawyers, colleagues, their spouses, to reach out to this committee to say, my husband's a lawyer and we're having problems. I think he drinks too much. And then this committee can reach out to that attorney and help, have a safe, and we're not going to turn them in, and they're not going to lose their license. So there's that safety. I don't feel all professions have that safety. And indeed, it was the one thing that my sister was very concerned about throughout her active addiction, throughout her life, was losing her license, because that's her ability to, that's part of her purpose and part of her being. Has great value to her. So one thing I noticed is that um, it was of great benefit for attorneys to have a safe haven. Like, I'm not going to narc on you. I'm going to get you help. This is a colleague that's going to help. My sister didn't have that in her profession. She had that with her family, and that's the next best thing. So I'm kind of answering the question sideways. In my experience in working on the Lawyers Assistance Committee, high functioning criminal defense lawyers suffering from addiction, excellent attorneys. I mean, when they are on their A game, they do good work, right? But they're suffering. That's basically what addiction is, Myrna, it's suffering. And so that's, I just had this observation.
They got to take a pill to work. And once they take the pill, they're doing really well. And, so
until they're not, until everything's out of control,
right.
Until they're not making deadlines.
Okay, so what you're saying is a high functioning addict is someone that performs really, really well, the top of their game, because of the pills that they're using to make them function. Okay, all right. That's a good definition.
But they're also, I mean, they're good lawyers,
Right, yeah. But, I mean, we're reaching everybody that's not lawyers. So we're talking about the person that goes to work every day and, they got to take a Xanax or, shoot up with heroin or take a pain pill or whatever. But the good news for anyone that's listening is, they're high functioning, so they're doing their job and they're able to function in society once they take the pill or whatever they're doing, or the drink, right? So let's say that we've got a case study where someone is performing really well, right? So you would never think that they're an addiction, but you're saying that you can spot the signs. And then you had a little trick question where it could also be you, that you wouldn't even recognize if you're a high function addict. So let's talk about that. One, how do you spot the signs where somebody is performing at a great level and there's no way that you would suspect that they're an addict?
They're high performing until they're not. And then they really
they're high performing when they take the drug. If they don't take the drug, they probably can't perform.
Well, they also get ensnarled where they're not, whatever the profession is, or whatever the sphere is, I'll say, they're not, until they're not kicking the ball and making the goal, until they're not making deadlines, until they're not, or they're showing up, and the observation is that there is dysfunction, or there is incapability to collect thoughts, to not showing up unprepared, showing up disheveled, showing up with pills, or being dependent upon the medication or the elixir, I don't care what it is, to perform.
Right. Because that's what I said. Once they're taking the pill, they're going to perform. And when we're looking at them where they're performing at a high level, but you're saying that we can spot some of the signs. So that's what you're saying. You're right. They're performing at a high level, but let's say you're asking them a question that they have to think about. Maybe their mind can't grab the concept. I'm getting the answers here, or you're talking about, maybe somebody grows a beard because they're no longer interested in how they look, kind of those type of things, right?
Right. Or they're not showing up. There's always an excuse to why they can't show up. Whether and I'm sick. Which I look back on that. Yeah, she was sick. She was dope sick, man. I mean, she wasn't like showing up for, we had sister dates regularly, and we do now again, but it broke my heart. And or I'm not going to show, I have too much paperwork to do at my job, and she would never do it. And then there were crises with her work, like she was not trusting her supervisor, and she thought that everybody was out to get her, and that people were actually strategizing. It's almost like this hallucination. And I was on a walk with her, and I'm like,
paranoia is probably the side effect of a lot of those drugs.
I said, if I was
especially if she's doing mushrooms.
I said, if I was your employer, I think the same way. I do the same thing, And so those were kind of little hints to me, their physical appearance. I noticed that she started to do her hair different. Like she grew it long and then she'd bring it over her eye, right? And her complexion was becoming dull and scaly. And then I noticed that she was losing her hair. I now know she was picking her hair, which is a symptom of drug use. They become fastidious, and it starts with a T. I don't know, it's defined in my book. I have a glossary of terms in my book too. But these different observations of, and she would dress in layers and always be in long sleeves. And she just felt, good arms, like something to show off there.
Well, the long sleeves thing is a dead giveaway because, yeah, they don't want to show the tracks and arms. No, I had my first
I know that now.
experience, right? My first experience with an addict was someone that I was very close to at work, and she was a heroin addict. And for some unknown reason, she told me her story, and and she was such a, I don't know if you want, there's a gradation, but I mean, she was one of the ones where she told me that putting it in her arm the high wasn't coming fast enough. So she would put it in her neck, and she had to wear scarves because there was a huge hole in her neck. And as you were talking just now, I remember when you say, don't give them cash. But you know what she did once when she needed money? She sold her father's car. And I'm sure she didn't get a whole lot of money for it, like maybe $1,000 or something. But yeah, I mean, her father was my boss. Her father owned a company, so she worked for him, and he was a very wealthy man. So I think he gave her a car to drive, and she sold it. But I had good experience with her. Talked about how she was anxious, and she needed a safe person just to go outside, and yeah, and then she went on to the methadone thing. So I knew about that, way back, she in Toronto. So but let's say that,
you were for
what was
her.
that?
What an angel you were for her, to a safe place for her. I mean, God bless you, Myrna. I mean, that's stepping into that relationship. I mean, it's bringing chills, and my eyes are turning, because it's such a loving thing to do, is hold space for her fear and her impairments and her suffering. That takes courage.
Talk. Yeah, right. She would talk, and I would listen and offer her
Wonderful.
comfort and support. And I learned a lot about addiction from her. And then I was in a relationship with a man that was addicted to crack. So those are my two personal experiences. But yes, but I'm curious about, how would someone not know that they are a high functioning addict? Any thoughts on that?
Well, see, not being an addict myself, I don't know that. However, what I can comment on is what I've observed with my sister. So I can come at it from that angle. Our family was
So
very
hang on, before you answer that question, is there any time she didn't know she was an addict? I'm not sure if she's an excellent subject, because did she not know she was an addict?
Well, she was a child.
Okay,
So
all right.
my feeling is that my opinion and feeling
Mhm.
is that she became addicted when she was a child, a preteen.
Okay.
And I 100% right that she was like raised on it, type thing.
Mhm.
And then when she's kicking it in in high school and college, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, I'm not her. This is just what you do, and I got it under control. She probably didn't know she was an addict then.
Okay, all right.
Um, when we did the intervention with her, she, I feel so grateful for this. She never denied that she was an addict, and she knew she needed help. She just thought she could do it herself.
Mm, okay,
So it
all
says my
right,
internet. Okay.
right.
But I and in her process of recovery, she has shared with me and others that she notices her triggers,
Mm,
and that those are learning moments for her. So, and then there were moments when people other than her family would be like, hey, do you know how much fentanyl you have in your system right now? You should be dead.
I don't know. Wow. She took
And
fentanyl.
fentanyl,
Wow.
it was in her system,
Oh,
which is a big
she's
problem.
lucky.
It's
That thing kills
it's
in seconds now. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
And she overdosed. I mean, in her shares, she overdosed more than twice, and was Narcan, not by by other addicts and junkies, and they stole all her stuff. And so it was a point where she realized, I want to live, and I know a life other than this, and I can have it. I know I can.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's so I can't directly answer the question if you know it your own self. I can only share with you what she shared with me and observations I've had.
Okay. Yeah. 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 You're right. I think it's true that people that don't know that they're an addict just think that, hey, I'm just recreational, um, and that they've got it under control. But yeah, to me, if you need it to function, then you're an addict, right? Can we put that label on it? If you need anything to function, then you're addicted to it.
Uh, Perhaps, yeah. I also I feel that when life has become unmanageable and you're unable to function in life, you have a problem. That's a problem, you
Right.
know. Um, and
And that's another
that's
one. If
yeah,
life becomes unmanageable and you're able to function without drugs, right, then yes.
yeah,
Because you're doing something other than maybe going to a therapist and talking about it and trying to figure out
right.
what the problem is. You're self-medicating, right? So you can feel
Yes,
better.
exactly. And that's
Yeah.
another thing, Myrna, is like through my law practice. I mean, I'm a
Mhm.
personal injury lawyer, and so a lot of people um, are prescribed pain medication for their injury. And I would see it. I would see it with my clients, but I could not see it with my sister. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
You know, I was that close.
Right. Right.
And I
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
always,
Yeah. Those pain
eh,
pills are dangerous. Oxycodone is the worst one. I always, and they're still prescribing it. And I just tell people, hey, you know what? You take that. They're saying if you take that thing for more than 5 days, you become addicted. I said, take that sparingly. Only take it for a little bit. And yeah, my husband had back surgery, and of course that's what they give him. And I says, be very careful with that. Yeah, because and where I became, I mean, I've always heard about it, but I had a stint where I was an insurance salesperson. And when I went to someone's home, because I was, yeah, working on the road, not in a call center, I would go to people's houses to write policies. And when I would go in and sit down, and they always had these questions that you ask them before. If they say that they were taking oxycodone, it was an immediate denial. Immediate denial. The insurance company wanted nothing to do with you. And guess what? Once you're on oxycodone, you're on it for life. You can't ever get off of it. You can't even get insurance, right? So I became have a deep respect for oxycodone, when I was doing insurance. So I tell people, don't get hooked on that stuff. you know um, they're going to prescribe it when you have pain. Only take it when you're really in pain, so that your body doesn't get accustomed to taking that drug to relieve the pain.
sure,
You know what I mean?
sure.
So
It
yeah.
calls
So
it
well,
calls to question
mhm.
how is one going to manage pain and suffering? That's what it gets down to, in my opinion. Is like, I don't care if it's um I mean uh, malaise in life. That's some sort of suffering. So how am I going to manage that? Am I going to smoke weed? Am I going to go on a hike? Am I going to, how am I going to manage the malaise with life circumstance, existence? And that is prolific in contemporary culture. And so getting into that, how you're going to do it personally, how am I going to manage this pain? I'm going to be in pain. How am I going to step into that? I'm scared, but what am I going to do? Am I going to do physical therapy, or am I going to take a pill and zone out?
That's a good point. That's a very good point. That's
That's
probably the most important point of our conversation, because what you just said is so important that I'm going to repeat it. So yes, people take a drink when they're not feeling good. But you're right. Instead of taking that drink, you're right. You can go for a walk. You can put on some music. You can watch funny movies. There's so many things that you can do to get yourself out of the funk instead of taking that drink, right? If you're in pain, then there's also a way that you can breathe into that pain and relieve it, because I've done it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I had pain in my body, I've learned that if you breathe into it and relax yourself, but yeah, don't just go for the pill. Don't just go for the drink. Don't just go for something that's a quick fix, right? That is very, very important, because guess what we're talking about? We're talking about addiction, but you know what? I always say, don't take the crack when somebody offers it to you. Don't take the heroin when somebody offers it to you. Don't take the pill, because that's how it starts. You go to a party and someone says, I'm like watching this movie the other day, and this girl walks up to this guy and say, take this pill, you feel better. And he just pops it in his mouth. That is how it starts. What was that?
Yeah. You don't know what's in that. I mean,
don't
it's
know
just
what's
like
in
being
there.
roofied,
But that's what they do. That's what they do. If you hear anybody's story, it doesn't always start like your sister and originate like your sister. It usually is they're going out with somebody, or they're going to a party and someone says, hey, you want to try this? You want to take this? Pop this pill, you'll feel better. You're depressed? Take this, you'll feel better. And they do. And guess what? That is the start to a very, very painful life. Very, very painful life, because it's hard to get off. Very, very hard. Right. So before I talk about your book, it sounds like your sister is still alive. So how is she doing?
She's doing wonderfully. We're going on this March in 2024. It will be 5 years that she is in recovery. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's the magic number they're saying. Once you get to 5 years, you're good.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful.
Yeah,
So one of those
wonderful.
recovery things stuck. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Well, she's back to having a clinical practice with a counseling delivery group. And she has a parallel profession as a life coach for women in recovery. So that is doing very well.
That's the perfect thing, people go into
coaching. I know.
when they have experienced something and gotten over it. Now they teach people. That's amazing.
Girl, I'm so effusive over this, because remember when I told you that that she had to find her own way? That rubric of the rehab situation, because she's trained as a counselor, right? So she's showing up to rehab, like they're trying to fit a circle into triangle little things. That little toy they give babies, and you got to put the thing in the thing. Not fitting. She's not gonna fit in this thing that you got going on. It's not gonna happen. We were trained to question authority. We were trained to ask questions and be curious, right? So she's like showing up and she's not fitting in their rubric, right? So she had to develop what's gonna fit for her. She became a trauma-informed yoga instructor. She delivers trauma-informed programs in her counseling to businesses, because that is woven into the suffering that is embedded in addiction that we were talking about before, where people just want to take a pill or take a drink or shoot up or a toke to escape the suffering of life, which could be trauma. I don't know. But her stepping into that, delivering it to workplaces, all different kinds of workplaces, gyms, and you know,
Yes, yes,
facilities.
yes,
It's wonderful.
yes. Listen, if we're gonna leave anything with you, is that from you taken away from this conversation is don't find substances to make you feel better. Don't take the Xanax. Don't take the drink. I will tell you, I'm so aware of that. There are several times that I'm usually a high, I almost want to use the word functioning, but that's probably not the right word for today. But I'm a high energy person. You know what I mean? I'm like very bubbly and always feeling good. And I manage my energy very well. But once in a while, because I'm also living consciously, I feel in the dumps. Once in a while, I feel this negative energy in me. And I want to go take a drink because I know it will stop it. And I deliberately do not go take a drink because guess what? Because every time I feel like that, then I'm going to take a drink. And sooner or later, it's going to get out of control. I don't have an
Then that's
addictive
your go-to.
personality, so I probably
That's your
wouldn't get
go-to
out of
to
control.
salve
What
that.
was that?
And that then becomes your go-to to
Right.
salve the suffering.
Yes.
So
Yes.
but being the governor of your own happiness, if you will, or how you're gonna manage the pain, like for example, what you were saying about your husband going into back surgery.
Mhm.
He's the governor of his own dang self of how I know there's going to be pain. How am I going to manage this? You
Right.
know, and it's a discussion that you can have with your provider. Well,
Mhm.
I can give you these pills. Well, I have a concern, doctor. I don't want to. I want to be. Are there other ways that I can manage what I know is coming at my life? You
Mhm.
know, right now that
Mhm.
will be that won't be that. What are some other options to, and write those down, what am
Yeah,
I going to,
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
I'm feeling this, what if
Mhm.
I'm feeling this, or when I feel this, have like a list of 5 things. I'm going to do this because I know that
Right.
neutralizes that in a healthy way. For me, it's like a cup of tea, a walk in nature. Sometimes it's an Epsom salt bath, or dancing, or
Yes.
putting on music that I like, playing with my dog, jumping on a
Yes,
trampoline,
yes,
all those
yes.
kinds of things.
They're
Shift.
very good to get you out of your funk. But you know what? Yes, I had an interview with someone on the show, and she left me a great tip. And I tried it. Like the very next time, I felt in a funk. I mean, she said to put on music and move your body, right? So when you move your body, then you get out of that funk, and it works. Music is a transporter anyway, right? But you said to move your
Mhm.
body, and it's true. But yeah, the reason I manage my energy so well is I meditate every day. I will go walk in the park. I live in Florida. There's sunshine all the time. You know what I mean? I listen to inspirational stuff when I'm walking. So I'm at like the high. And then at night, I watch funny movies or funny
Mhm.
things. Listen, I manage my energy very well. So I know all that. So, but yeah, once in a while, something sneaks in, right? And, but yeah, I've learned to go past, to go through it and things like that. So yeah, as you guys are listening, yeah, these are all tips that we're leaving, or breadcrumbs we're leaving here so that you can, get out of having to use a substance to manage life, because it doesn't end well. You know,
Mhm.
Michaela's
Mhm.
sister had to go through hell in order to come through to get on the other side. So yes, I am. Let's talk about your book now. It's called Sister Siren: A Field Guide on How to Love an Addict. So as an attorney, what made you decide to become a writer and write about this story?
Well, this experience was traumatic for me. And I mean, I went to the gates of hell with her. So,
Yes.
I mean, like
Mhm.
I was like running right alongside with her. And
Okay.
so the, the, the conversation you were having about managing your energy, I mean, I got sucked into this experience. And when people love addicts, that's what happens. You get sucked into this, and there you can lose sight of your own. You don't manage your energy. because you're trying to manage theirs,
Right,
So
right.
I wrote the book to share the experience so people wouldn't know that they're alone. I felt very alone. I felt like I'm the only one that loves an addict, and and then the tips and tools that worked for me to manage my energy so I can step in with love with her and my other family members, my parents, my husband, my children, our community. So to share the experiences and to share the tips and tools um, with others on how to love an addict. So the full title is Sister Siren, a nonfiction about addiction and a field guide on how to love an addict. So part of that is also taking care of yourself so you can step in with love with them. And I talk about also in the book, and it's in there, red flag feelings, RFFs, I call them red flag feelings, because that's going to come up. The betrayals or perceived betrayals, the resentments, the anger, the grief, all of that. And that brings you to low energy. I shouldn't say you, me to low energy, Myrna. And so I had to develop practices and my own little self-created rubrics about how I can step in, not only with her, but in my life, because I was losing my life in her and her addiction. And I could, so I came up with MWBT, morning well-being time. So I get up at a certain time, and I have a whole practice that I designed my own dang self that brings me up. During those times, I would meet what I would say, what I call my red flag feelings. I was scared to death she was going to die. I was scared that I would have to be the one that would have to go identify and tell my parents and deliver a eulogy. Well, how the heck was I going to do that if so I would, and those things held me back, and they would make me show up in anxiety and show up crazy woman, reactionary. And that's not the woman I want to be. That's not the person I wanted to be. So I would make an appointment with my RFFs, red flag feelings, to chase that squirrel down the hole, so to speak, noodle it out. What am I really afraid of here? And step into that. I was really afraid she was going to die. I was really afraid I would have to step in front of our small community and say, I'm the sister of an addict and she died this way. That was my fear, and that we would lose her forever. And when I stepped in and I ended up, and I went all the way down to the tentacles of all of that. I wrote her obituary. I ended up writing my own obituary. I wrote, I chased it all the way down there. That way, if that moment surfaces, I mean, Myrna, that is how I was able to go to a trap house, see her suffering, and stand there in light and love and say, I love you. I can take you to the hospital. And venom was coming at me. Venom was coming at me. The devil was there. And she's like, no, I can take care of myself. And I'm like, well, it appears that you can't. Like I kept my calm. It appears that you can't. You don't love me. You don't love me. And I'm like, you can't tell me who I love, and I love you. That's why I'm here. But I was able to stand there. And she wrote the prologue to my book. And her prologue is the other side of that coin is my chapter 16, which we are in agreement is the rock bottom moment of our relationship. But the book talks about stepping in with those red flag feelings so you don't take the pill or you don't take some other escape, and you noodle as to what it is. And it gives tips and tools about how to create that so you can step in with love with the addict you love, and you can care for yourself and not lose yourself.
Right. Yes. That's a good book. That's a good book. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
We all need tools in life. That's another word. Tools in order to help us manage this thing called life. And yes, there's so much substance out there right now.
You need a
So
field guide.
somebody that's listening probably do know an addict, I mean, my experience has been, the two that I mentioned, plus what I see on TV, or in the movies. But yeah, there are people that are living with an addict right now, family members, and I'm pretty sure your book would be a good. I like the fact that you call it a field guide. Yes, what do you do in the field? What do you do when this is happening? You know what I mean? Yeah, so very good. All right, so tell us where we can pick up a copy of your book, if you have a website, what your social media handles are.
Yes, I do have a website. It's MK Canterbury. Um, if you Google Sister Siren, uh, Michaela, that's Michael with an A, like the goddess, Michael with an A, Canterbury, like the tails, like the archbishop, not like a strawberry, but
Okay.
Canterbury. Sister Siren, you can get the book on Amazon, of course. I just had a thing with Barnes and Noble there, so they're carrying it. Yay!
Nice.
Also, well, the Anchorage Airport is carrying it. Anchorage
Wow,
Airport.
good for
But
you.
anyway, yeah. So you can go to my website. Uh, um, you can email me, author@mkcanterbury.com. I have monthly not newsletters, monthly. They're not newsletters and they're not salesy. What they are more tips and tools and discussion things. Like I just sent one out for Nurturing November and how to care for yourself. And the topic is around, you know, the fact that we love addicts. So anyway, and yes, I Michaela Canterbury. I have I'm on social media on Facebook, or Spacebook as my dad calls it. But anyway, and I have a private group that is a community that I'm starting about with loving addicts and people who
Loving
love
addicts,
addicts.
that's great. What is your
Yeah,
social medium? I missed that.
Michaela
Okay.
Canterbury.
Okay, so just your name. Okay.
Yeah, Michael with an A, Canterbury like the tails.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I will have a transcript of our conversation on the show page, which is blog.myhelps.us. I will link out to your website. I'll link out to your book, and I'll also have your social media handles. So anybody that's missed it, just head to the show page, and then you can click on the link on that. But yeah, this was a great conversation, Michaela. I love that name too. This is a great conversation. You know, expanding your knowledge is always good, expanding your knowledge, expanding your experience. And it's great that when we have experienced something that we share it. In fact, I think that's what God gives you experiences for. So I'm glad that you're writing a book about your experience. I'm glad that your sister is now coaching women from her experience, because yes, we all need to hold the hand of someone else that's going through something. And that's basically what we do. We do with the podcast, we do with books, we do with coaching, and we're just giving people tools in order to transform their minds so that they can transform their lives, which is the name of the show. So, yeah, so thank you, Michaela. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experience. Thank you for, writing the book and, letting us almost like a day in the life of what the things that an addict goes through. And maybe it starts as simply as, you're right, you're putting so many kids now in ADHD meds such so that they can function. And on what you're saying, it's a bad thing, because then you're depending on something to get you through the day or for behavior purposes, you know what I mean? Yeah, so that's also a caution to parents as well. Be careful what you
Exactly.
start your kids on,
Exactly.
because you're
And
setting
if
them
the
up for
issue,
failure.
right,
Right.
if
Yeah.
the issue is some behavior, let's talk
Yes.
about that. Like,
Yes.
can you not accept the behavior? Is society saying this behavior is aberrant? Well, let's go to that and talk about that. Is it that you don't like it? like it's prickly for you, well, that's on you.
Right.
For you to figure
Exactly.
out. It's not the kid's
Yes.
fault, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
come
You're
on.
hyper, which is but ADHD, hyper kids. That's what they do. They try to,
Yeah, go
and
on
sometimes
nature
they make
walk.
bad decisions, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was a foster mom and all my kids were on that med and it messed them up. It messed them up. The girls start having their period and all kinds of stuff. It's not a good drug.
Yeah. And I want
Yeah.
to thank you for having me on, oh my gosh, for stepping into those relationships that you spoke of, uh, and just with courageously, with love and holding space for people that are suffering. I also feel that that's really what it gets down to when we love people that are suffering. And that's what I feel addiction is really about. It's stepping in without judgment and how can I serve this moment? Where it doesn't take away from me, it doesn't hurt me, but it serves them, and it's better for our relationship together. Took great courage for you to do that. And we need more people like you.
Well, thank you. Yes, before I became a coach, I was always a good listener and somebody that can share empathy. And that's probably what that was all about. Yeah. So
For
thank
sure.
you so much for that. I appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, we're fresh out of time. So thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. I hope that my conversation today with Michaela was eye-opening for you. Run out and grab a copy of her book, join her Facebook group. If you are in a relationship with an addict and you want some tools, and again, we ask this question, you could be one. So if you're having any of these issues, then yes, knowledge is power. Learn the tools. So thank you, Michaela. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.